Welcome to the stage, Nuala O'Connor.
Good evening. So you've met my daughter. I think she's spectacular. Of course, I think all three of my children are spectacular. Of course, I'm also totally biased. But it's true that Nora and Nina and so many young people today, I think, are so much more savvy about the world than many of us, perhaps certainly I was, at those ages. They're aware of the power and the perils of technology, and they are awake. They are mad woke, as the kids say, to the politics of our time. And I think all the parents in the room will agree there is no amount of personal success that compares to watching your child thrive and grow and succeed and become a good human being. But tonight there's another family member on my mind, because I was just up in New Jersey this weekend. Come on, Jersey gets some applause. Come on, right? And we celebrated my dad's 80th birthday. Yes, that deserves applause too. He'll be watching this online, so yes, applaud for Dad. You know, anybody who knows me knows they hear about my dad within a few minutes of meeting me. I am incredibly proud of my dad. I'll tell you how he walked down Wall Street to find a job when he arrived from Ireland. He has courage, he has spark, he has optimism, he has a profound belief in this country and in our institutions. And there's my dad. That picture was taken in Ireland in 1959, not long before he left to come to the United States in search of a new life, in search of prosperity, in search of new freedoms. Now, every year I think a lot about what I'm going to say to all of you and respect your time and to honor my colleagues at CDT and our important work. But tonight, of course, more than ever, when I'm talking about my family, I want to honor them and their story and respect their privacy also. So I made a point of calling Mom and Dad and saying, I'm going to say this, and here's a copy, and what do you think? And this weekend we had some conversations about some of these issues, as we always do. I talk to my parents all the time, and they have some strong opinions on Washington and immigration and citizenship and our democracy. And it will surprise no one in this room that we don't always agree on those issues. I'm sure many of you have these experiences with your own family. But there are some things I do know, and there are some things on which we do agree. I know my parents left behind everything they knew: their family, their friends, their community, their culture, to give this family, our family, a better life. They were certainly leaving behind the troubles in Northern Ireland in search of physical safety. But they were also in search of a society where success, economic, political, social, would not be predetermined and limited by their religion, by their class, by other characteristics. And we agreed in our conversation that while countries have a right to determine their borders, they also have an obligation to respect the dignity of visitors and potential citizens in this country. So this is where the conversation gets really interesting. My dad and I are yakking away, and my mom calls in from the kitchen and says, don't forget about the rights of citizens as well. And she reminded me that for many years we lived in this country as green card holders. And she said, you know, we had to go to the post office every December to register. Now, first of all, doesn't that sound weirdly biblical, going to register every December somewhere? I mean, I don't know where that comes from. But she said, you know, Nuala, they called us aliens. And I never liked that word. That was almost 50 years ago. And the emotion that brought up for her and for me and other members of our family. Words matter. Dignities and indignities, whether large or small, matter in how people perceive us and our country. That is some of the lens through which we look at things at CDT. Whether you consider it the language of fundamental human rights, civil liberties, human dignity, It is respect for the individual and their primacy in their relationship to their government or to any institution. The question of whether the boundary of self has been violated or enhanced, online or off, through the use of technology and the collection of data. And the question of how we treat the marginalized, the underrepresented, those who have no voice in our design and our devices. How we give voice to and hold space for the least among us. That is how we will be judged. And while a lot of this discussion has focused on the role of government and the activities of our government, companies have a role to play here too. There's at least one airline who knows recently that people know what indignity looks like when they see it. And while it's certainly a little less obvious online and a little more opaque and hard to define, digital dignity, respecting the boundary around self, the right to control one's own data and one's own digital manifestation, the right to your digital dignity, is increasingly a necessary part of corporate or civic responsibility in the digital age. And this is where CDT comes in. Through our work, the Center for Democracy and Technology is not only a voice for democratic values in design, we are an advocate for the individual. Here are a few of the things I'm proud of in our advocacy this past year. CDT responded to calls for increased intrusion into devices, into social media and passwords and other accounts with a clear no. We convened a coalition of groups in technology, immigration, and civil rights to push back against increasing calls for comprehensive device searches at the border. I want to note for all of you that this work began last summer in response to a proposal from a previous administration. Just to be completely clear, we think this is a bad idea under any administration. And with our deeply researched and thoroughly analyzed long-form papers and research and writing and letters to the government and our No Pass for Gov online campaign, CDT engaged a diverse coalition and fostered, I think, a new conversation around this. Every country has a right to secure its boundaries and its borders, but we can and must do that with compassion and with a profound respect for human dignity. People asking to enter a country are vulnerable. They're at sometimes their most vulnerable moment in their lives. We can set strong boundaries, but we can also be kind. We have some great other work in our privacy group, and you've met Michelle Demoy, the new director. This team is energized and is doing some amazing work on algorithmic accountability, on decision-making, and on the results of those questions and how that data is used. They've developed a new tool that will stress test outcomes for unintended bias and recommend new factors and values for designs of new devices and systems. The CDT privacy and open internet teams work together on the varying stages of the FCC proposals on ISP privacy. And we believe that whether the question is industry or government, in any form or sector, when it comes to the collection of personal data, if a relationship with an individual is comprehensive and unavoidable, if there are serious consequences to the decisions that come from the collection of that data, then that it calls for a greater need for transparency, for scrutiny, and for accountability in those transactions. Seen through the eyes of digital dignity, providing control and accessibility to the individual is an essential element of digital dignity. We look forward to partnering with anyone who wants to come to the table and talk about genuine privacy protections for individuals online. One of our busiest teams is our freedom of expression team. And while the issues of free expression look very different here in the United States than they do elsewhere in the world, we believe that the opportunity to use the internet as a platform for speech is essential to the construct of digital dignity. This team's work has the hardest fact patterns, whether dealing with issues of revenge porn, the right to be forgotten, countering violent extremism, or hate speech. This team's work touches on the most heartbreaking and difficult stories. And while we will remain an ardent advocate of the free flow of information and freedom of expression for all, we recognize that there are responsibilities and consequences for individuals and institutions alike. And lastly, I am immensely proud of our most technical work, led by Joe Lorenzo Hall, who you met earlier. Both our work advocating for the protection of white hat hackers, who will make the world a better and a safer place, and our proactive efforts to make the entire internet more secure by encouraging the complete adoption of HTTPS across the web. We've also developed some new tools, you can find them on our website, to educate and empower individuals to take more control of their own digital experience and their own cybersecurity. And most fundamentally, and I think everybody in the room knows this, in years past and in years going forward, CDT has been a steadfast advocate for end-to-end encryption. This includes our work. It's no surprise that we will oppose any proposal aimed at weakening encryption or mandating backdoors in any personal technology ever. These issues, privacy, free speech, encryption, are all at their core, I believe, about respect for the individual, about the dignity of the individual. The dignity of the individual is at the heart of our work at CDT, and I am so proud of the impact of our organization. And I've never been more certain that CDT is essential to shaping an inclusive, digitally empowered, democratic world. In this time of fractious discourse, we bring together differing viewpoints, differing vantage points, experiences, and expertise, with the shared commitment to the deployment of technology in service of democracy. This year, bringing people of differing perspectives and beliefs seems a little harder than usual and more necessary than ever. But we must have these hard and important conversations that will shape our shared future. And we saw a little bit of what that future looks like in that beautiful video from Teen Vogue of confident, empowered young people, and in the poise and wisdom and global awareness of Nina and Nora. And as I said before, I'm in awe of where they are already, and I'm filled with hope for the world that they will someday lead. And our job as the supposed grown-ups in the room is to make sure we set an example that they can be proud of, and that we shape digital and political systems that include and elevate all voices. We owe them at least this. And whatever your politics and your perspective on the last year, it seems that a clear takeaway for many of us is that democracy is not a spectator sport, and that civic engagement is required from all of us and at all levels of government. We in this room also know that technology has a role to play in shaping the world around us, including our own participation in our democracy. Thank you for joining with us as we continue our work in service of your digital dignity and democracy around the world. Thank you.